man is bound to respect. Jim Crow, we overcame all of that.
Let me ask you a question.
But what it tells me, Joe, is whatever they throw at us, brother, we gonna overcome it still.
That is a fact. And this is where I'm talking about the intelligence, right? So we see Malcolm X, we see Barack Obama, we see Johnny Cochran's, we see over and over again, we see excessively intelligent black men. Why is it that certain people can't look at a black man in the face and admit that he might be more intelligent than them?
That's so deep, Joe, what you say. You really getting at the white America straight up now. I go in courtrooms and we do jury selection, Joe, and most of the time it's predominantly white people because America is 73% white. And what we literally, I ask them, and I sometimes get in trouble with the judge because I say, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, I know you can quote the preamble to the Declaration of Independence, but what I want to know is, do you really believe it? Do you really believe it when you say we hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equally, that they're endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, that amongst them are life and liberty and the pursuit of happiness? Do you believe that? And I think, Joe, in their mind, they say, well, this black guy ain't really as intelligent as me. This black woman ain't as resourceful as me. This Hispanic lady, she really isn't sharp as me. And, you know, I think they believe that in their heart. But the truth of the matter, if you're going to believe that Declaration of Independence, you got to say brothers and sisters are equal to you in every way. But they don't really believe that.
No, they don't believe that. And that's when you come in there and you get $600 million for the people.
and we think we're going to get another billion, Joe, from the private companies. This was from the state of Michigan.
Let me explain something. Y'all watch this is before George Floyd, rest in peace. I watched a documentary on Netflix based on Flynt. So I kind of like seen they was following the police around. I don't know if you ever seen this. Yeah. And they were talking about how underfunded they are. And sometimes they go out there in that big city, they got 8 cots. People call 911. It takes 2 hours for a car to respond. I mean, people saying they're shooting. And the cop coming tomorrow asking about what the guy had on.
Yeah, it is a forgotten city, Joe. Flynt was at one point the most desired city in America to live in because you had the car manufacturing in the 70s, you had GM, you had Ford, you had everybody going to Detroit, especially for our community. You had jobs that was establishing access to wealth. But then they started sending all the jobs to China, started sending all the jobs to Mexico. And when they did that, the car manufacturers, they closed down the factories. And so the city went from here to here in a matter of years, and they never, ever invested anything else in Flint, Michigan. And so when you go, it's sad, man, because you see a lot of brothers and sisters, houses are dilapidated. They have literally, Joe, a food desert. There is no grocery store in a 10-mile radius of Flint, Michigan. So when black people, brown people, and the few white people live there want to go get fresh vegetables, they have to drive 20, 30 miles. And that's what we're fighting with, talking about this poverty. And so then you have, and I just say, a lack of resources with the police department, access to medical health care, the education system. And so that's why it was such a historic victory, because at least it's not nearly enough, because if this was in a white community and they were poisoning your children and saying that they're going to now have brain issues and they're going to have learning disabilities, how much money would I have to give you to say my child can endure this?
It wouldn't be enough. It wouldn't be enough. You just couldn't. It wouldn't be enough. So let me ask you something, Mr. Crump. How does this money get divided? How does it go back to the people?
So it's going to go to most of the children. because the children are the ones who are affected most. Joe, you may remember, I remember when I was younger, they said in the projects and in the schools, the older poor schools and the minority communities, they would have lead paint on the windowsills. And they would tell
asbestos, asthma. This been happening in the hood.
Exactly, Joe. And so people who grew up in the hood, you know that because your mother, if she ever saw you at 2 years old or 3-year-old lick the windowsill just one time, you were told immediately to get your child to the hospital to test for the levels of lead poisoning that they had been exposed to. Now imagine drinking the lead poison, cooking in the lead poison water, bathing in the lead poisoning water for 2 years, how it would affect the body. And so that's what we're dealing with. And Joe, I come back to this point because people still don't acknowledge that they deliberately poison the city. And you come back to how they keep putting all these little black and brown people in jail for selling weed. And they say we poison in the community. But yet when they poison the community, nothing happens. And man, don't get me started on the fact that they now have legalized weed in most states, but we still have brothers and sisters sitting in prison now for selling weed. It should. I object every time I get a chance.
I won't say no names. I've seen judges smoke weed in my face. Judges.
Yep.
Like me personally, all jokes aside, I don't smoke weed.
Yeah, me neither.
I don't want to tell you the story. I'll embarrass you about the one time I smoked weed. You don't want to hear that, right? And so I got so paranoid, I never did it again. It looked good. I think it's good. But I've actually, with my own eyes, seen judges smoke weed hanging out with us, friends. And I was like, God damn, the judge is smoking the weed. But you are correct. There's people in jail for 20, 30 years for weed, when weed is legit. And if you want to get deep into that, let's talk some real stuff. I've been touring. I've been rocking for 25 years. Mm-hmm. One of my spots is Denver, Colorado. When I used to go to Denver, Colorado, it would be just white people that lived in Denver, regular middle class, whatever, regular on the plane. Now when I go to Denver, Colorado to do a show and I sit in first class, it's girls with poodles, Wall Street people in it. Now the drug dealer has become Wall Street.
Yep.
It's not. So they gave up a gimmick like, oh, this is the great weed rush in Denver. But at the end of the day, it's the hedge fund people who's selling the weed.
Yeah. And it's so deep, Joe, now that it's legalized, it's the government and mostly white businessmen are going to make billions and billions of dollars. And so literally what you have going on, Joe, is the government is now in the business of selling weed to make money to pay their bills. But when little black and brown people were selling weed to make money to pay their bills, they put all us in prison. So I object to the government being able to make any profit off of selling weed until they let all the black people and all the brown people and any other people who are sitting in prison out. Because until they do that, it's just hypocrisy, Joe.
Let me ask you something, Dad. What do you say to the people? And I love Reverend Al Sharpton. I don't care who don't like him. But what do you say to people who say something happens and Ben Crump is there? Like something happens and they like Reverend Al, he rally, he protests, and they will always say, this guy right here, he's an opportunist, he's a this. What do you say to those people, Ben Crump?
Well, the very interesting thing is this here. No matter what you do, people are going to talk about you. Mm-hmm. The height of arrogance is to think everybody is going to love you. That just ain't going to happen. You have to do what you believe in. I mean, my greatest heroes are Thurgood Marshall, Martin Luther King, they talked about them like dogs. I ain't talking about the white people. I'm talking about the black people. And so it's like Malcolm said, we have some brothers and sisters cheering for the people who are oppressing them and then condemning the people who are trying to help liberate them. And I'm not saying that you got to believe in everything that Ben Crump says or Al Sharpton or Barack Obama, anything. But go try to do something constructive. The easiest thing in the world to do is to be a critic. Just sit on the sideline and talk. Now, once you get up and go try to represent some people, start some organizations, do something to make a difference other than to criticize people who are trying to sacrifice on the front line the way they believe they can make a difference.
Man, let me tell you something, Crump. I believe in you. I love you. I've watched you on the front line. I seen you put your life on the line. I seen you, because a lot of people, there's people who say they'll do something, and there's people who go do something. And I'm going to keep it real with you. When you was out there with the George Floyd, you was in everything with the mask on and everything. I was home scared to death to come out my house, let alone protest because of the corona. And you was out there on the front line in the middle of the corona. That should be commended.
Yeah, and you know what got me out there, Joe? Because I was like you. I had been home quarantined for about 8 weeks. Had not left the house like everybody else. But then I got that call from the family, and I saw that video, man. And literally, Joe, you watch this brother. I mean, America has gotten used to reality TV, but we still haven't gotten used to watching the documentary of a
We never seen that.
Yeah, I mean, and he narrated the documentary.
Listen, Crump, we never seen that. And number two is, I'm going to give white people, because some of my best friends, in fact, a lot of my best friends are white. I'm going to give white people a pass and believe them when they say they never seen that. Yeah. So when you're looking at the marches now, when you see white people on the front line, and they're like, oh, wait a minute, we didn't know. Because the phone camera is a deadly thing, man. This phone is a deadly thing. So when you see the guy sitting there on his knee, and he could care less.
Yeah.
I'm going to tell you what. Right?
It's hard to watch, man.
Oh, no, that video. Well, I'm going to tell you what. The way the man kept his knee there, knowing he was getting filmed, right? He reminded me of a lion in the jungle just eating prey, and could care less. Care less. He was sitting there, and the scary part is, we know all police ain't bad. We do know that. A police officer saved my son's life one time, Ben Crump. He was choking on a piece of candy. By the time I would have got to the hospital, he would have died with no breath. So I can't. It's all the police officers. There's beautiful ones there. But it's something about giving a man the power to know that if he's having a bad day, he can kill someone on camera and get away with it.
Yeah. And Joe, when you think about it, they tortured him to death. I mean, he said, I can't breathe 28 times. Wow. And then he said, I can't feel my insides. I can't feel my legs. He said, tell my mama I love her. They gonna kill me. Tell my children I love them. I'm gone now. He literally narrated the documentary of his own death. And that's why you have so many people marching not only across America, but across the globe. I mean, the biggest protest was in Berlin, Germany.
Space under you, Ben Crump, and they got a real racial problem there. And so what I'm saying, racism exists everywhere. Yeah. There's even racism in Spanish countries between the dark-skinned blacks. I've been to countries. I've been to Haiti where the light-skinned Sean Paul-looking blacks is living the greatest, and the dark-skins. I've seen everything. Santo Domingo, Puerto Rico, wherever you name. Racism exists everywhere. And what you see is people tired of it. Yeah. And the biggest thing is you got older white people who possibly didn't see eye to eye or didn't understand what we were saying, that we getting harassed or beat up. And now they got black and brown grandchildren.
Exactly.
Oh.
Yeah. It's getting deep.
Don't think. No. Don't think. Wait a minute. My grandson is half black. My grandson is half Mexican, Puerto Rican. Yeah. Oh, you ain't killing him.
Yep.
And that's why they out there like that. Yeah, that's why they out there like that.
And it's so deep, Joe, because you talk about racism and colorism, xenophobia, all these issues in the world. And I'm astounded, Joe. Since we've been fighting for George Floyd and Breonna Taylor, especially George Floyd, we've been getting all these letters of support from places like Paris, France, and Toronto, Canada, Berlin, even Japan. And it's so deep to me that America has to understand the whole world is watching. Over 4 billion people now, or 4 billion times this video has been watched. Maybe people watching it repeatedly, but they gotta know that we're at a tipping point now. Something has to change in America.
Well, what happens is, Mr. Crump, what happens is my father worked his whole life as a baker, as a carpenter, and the man ain't got one gangster bone in his body. If he ever thought he got beat up, I'm telling you the truth. He went to his sister's wedding, he talked the wrong stuff, they beat him up, right?
Okay.
I watched my father get locked up the one time he ever got locked up. I'm talking about in the 70s because he didn't speak English. They pulled him over. He had his license, no speaking English. No, this is America. Talking English. Sorry, I'm Spanish, I'm Latino, I'm Cuba. License, speak English. I watched them lock my father up because he didn't speak English and spend the night in jail. The one time my father ever got locked up. So what happens is when you in the front line, or hip hop is in the front line, we speaking for the voiceless.
Yep.
But guess what? The voiceless got a voice because 4 billion people watched the video. Millions and millions of people all across the world joined together as one because they say, yo, we're tired of this. You've been beating us up. You've been damn near torturing us. Now they tortured.
That was torture. It was absolute torture. But as I talk in my book, Open Season, the legalized genocide of colored people, it talks about as bad as it is, how they kill.
Hold on. Ben Crump, could you say the title again?
Yes, sir. It's Open Season, the legalized genocide of colored people. And what we talk about, Joe, is as bad as how they killed George Floyd, as horrific as how they killed Breonna Taylor, Trayvon Martin, both of them in his own apartment, Sandra Bland, Eric Gardner, the first I Can't Breathe case. As horrific as all those cases is, it is worse, Joe, how they kill our people in every city, in every state, in every courtroom, every day in America with these trumped up felony convictions. Because once you get a felony conviction, your life changes in America, especially if you're a poor person of color. And in states like Florida, Tennessee, Texas, 1 out of every 5 black men is a convicted felon. And they say if the trend continues, Joe, in the next 25 years, 1 out of every 3 black men in America will be a convicted felon. So think about that. It's 3 brothers. You look to your left, you look to the right. One of them is a convicted felon who now has to bear a cross on the back for the rest of their life when they go try to get a job, when they go try to put food on the table, whatever they do. that way they are caught in the system now, and they are killing us softly. It's like,
you know what, Ben? This been your life's work, but me sitting home and watching George Floyd, and I think I know a lot. Got so educated on systemic racism. Look, I knew it was happening, but
yes.
I thought it was like I had a bad day, or I thought like maybe I didn't get that loan for the house. Like one time, I put down a down payment in a home, my first home I was ever going to buy in City Island in the Bronx, the nicest area. I put down $100,000. The bank ain't give me the loan. Now the seller keeps my money because the bank ain't want to give me the loan. And so I'm watching all this and I said, ain't this diabolical? This whole time, this thing was systemic.
Yes.
It was a plan.
Yes.
And when you start looking at it like that,
man,
you can pretty much go crazy.
You really do, Joe. I mean, we can talk for hours because talking about banking, my sister, Congresswoman Maxine Waters, my girl, she is incredible. She's over the United States House of Representatives Banking and Finance Committee. I had a case, and we can't talk about who the bank was. We settled for $25 million out of court for discriminating against black people who were their customers. And I found out, Joe, and I was shocked about this. They said for every black person that gets a loan in America, 40 to 50 white people get loans from banks. And so think about that now, Joe. The bank gives you access to capital. So when you want to start a business or you want to buy a house, you go to get the bank loan, but they tell you no. But then your white brother, your white sister, they have an idea for a business. They go in there and they give him $100,000. His credit the same as yours. And so now he has an unfair advantage on you. And I kept thinking, Joe, because I'm naive, and we learn that's what we do when we fight in these cases. I said, well, there are more white people in America than black people, so if they give him one black person loan, then they can justify it by saying there's a lot more white people. One of my white law partners who owns a bank, he said this. He said, no, Ben, it is 73% white people in America, 13% black. So that's 1 to every 7. So if they said for every time a black person got a loan, 7 to 10 people, white people get a loan, well, that would be consistent. But for every black person that get a loan, 40 white people get loans, man, that's just outright systematic racism.
You know what happens to me, Ben, right, is our ancestors were slaves. They built this country on their backs. And everybody we idolize, these rich institutional families that when you, I don't want to say them, but the minute you say their names, it's like, wow. And they did it on the backs of slaves. And then they said they was free and everything was equal, but these people ain't even had nowhere to go. And they had nowhere to, and
Joe, you getting deep, man. You getting deep on so many levels. When you think about we get in the book, when you get a chance, I'm gonna make sure I get you a copy. We talk about the so-called civil rights amendments, the 13th Amendment, that freed the slaves, the 14th Amendment, due process, 12th Amendment gave us right to vote and everything. But when you talk about those so-called civil rights amendments, within a year, the United States Supreme Court made it where none of those were applicable. So when the slaves got freed, they then were walking down the street because we free now, we ain't on the plantation. And then the local sheriff would come up and say, well, where are you going? Do you have a job? And you say, well, no, I just got free. They say, oh, you're a vagrant. And then they locked you up and then put you in jail, and most of the times sent you right back to the plantation that Abraham Lincoln allegedly freed you from. And that's why we started the chain gangs.
Let me explain something to you, Ben Crump, and this is a light. Let's go light on this, right? One time many years ago, I got my first Rolls Royce, I had a show in Jersey. I stopped, and this is the fat Joe, because now it's Fat Joe working out Joe, right? Slim, not so fat Joe, right? But this was fat Joe, right?
Yeah.
I got my big Rolls Royce first day. I go in there and might eat some Burger King, something. I come out the car's parked. I get in the car. Cop comes, the hat, you know those guys with the big boot. He hits my window, back, with the flashlight. So I open the window like, dog, you gonna break it? This might be $30,000, this window. Like, are you serious? Like, what's going on? So I'm not gonna lie to you. Me and him go back, and I never argue with the cops. But this guy was out of control. So I'm going back and forth with him. Like, yo, I know my rights, all that, right? Everybody say, I got a lawyer, I know my rights with him.
Yeah.
So I'm going back and forth with him. The man, this is a brand new car, you hear me? The man goes with a flashlight and goes in the bottom of the Rolls Royce. There's like mink floors, like mink carpet. He goes there and he says, you see that? And I said, what? He said that. It was a rock pebble that I got from walking from the eating into the thing. He said, what you see there? I said, a rock pebble. He said, I see crack cocaine. And I look at him and he said, and I could take you in right now and put it to the lab. It'll take 3 days for you to get out the system. Yep. When he did that, I looked at him. I said, okay, officer, you got it. He's like, okay, I got it. I know I got it. When I locked the window, I looked forward. I heard the record, change gon' come. Oh, yes, it is. I felt like a Spike Lee movie. I was floating in it. You know how Spike Lee having you floating? Yeah. All right, and change gon' come. Oh, so it don't matter how much money you got, how famous you can be. The truth is, Black and Latino people, especially, if you ain't got a voice, you're like an endangered species out here.
Yeah, it's so true, Joe. I don't care how much money you have, what zip code you live in. The first thing they see is your skin color. And then when you talk, if you're not speaking the English language that they consider their language, they are making prejudgments about you. And a cop who doesn't have half the talent you have, Joe, half the intellect, whatever, he's making a decision that he's above you and he's going to put you in your place. But I can just say the cop, Joe, because they're the low person on the pole. I mean, when you go in the courtroom, the prosecutors, the judges, everybody is trying to put minorities in their place to say, keep this status quo. Let's keep these people down here. We don't want to ever let them think they have a chance to be equal with us. And so when they see somebody like you, Joe, an intelligent, successful brother, you're their greatest fear. We're their greatest fear because they're saying everything we did, we tried to make them be in poverty. We tried to make sure they lived in the worst parts of town, make sure they had the worst education, make sure they had the worst health care. But no matter what we did to Joe, man, he rose anyway.
They rose up. They rose up, baby. Hey, they rose up. And that's why I know the intelligence of the Black and the brown man. It's so, when you start thinking about the odds against us, right? Yep. And when I look at brothers, and when they doing amazing things, and Jay-Z grew up in the projects and this, and I ain't just saying the famous ones, because I meet brothers and sisters, brown and Black, all the time, that are hundreds of millions, 300 million, billionaires, and they made it from nothing. And you say to yourself, we can't be dumb. We can't be the guys that you see every week on Cops, the reruns on TV. We can't be dummies. Our people is intelligent. And pretty much that's when I think about you, man, tell you something, man. There's no other way to explain it to you but courage. You know what I'm saying? And we know that you stand on the front line and you represent the people in these families. You know, these families, you know, they go through a lot of pain. And I don't know if it was LL yesterday or something, but I told, for some reason, Mr. Crump, people I grew up with, when they passing away, their family always calls me to come to the hospital. I don't know why. When they tell somebody he got a day or two left, all women or whatever, they call Fat Joe. They say, Joe, he's about to check out. We need you to come through. And so I go, that's hard. Like, really, really hard. And I walk in there, and these are friends of mine, they're great people, and I wish I hadn't had to. And I go in there, I pray with them, I tell them jokes, and then when I walk out, I tell the doctor's like, yo, he's going. Right? And just that moment alone takes so much out of me. And you that got to be with a family that's grieving, a town that's grieving, a country that's grieving. That's a lot of, we don't wish that on too many people.